This week's topic is heredity and Gregor Mendel. And today we start the flipped 5, which means that each day we will have a quick 5-minute lesson to help you study in small chunks. So today you did questions 1 ABC, 2 ABC in the textbook. What we're going to talk about today kind of overlaps with that, but doesn't exactly follow it. And we have here peas, a pea plant, and a dog. And the reason why I put the dog here is one of the things we'll talk about is Gregor Mendel. He studied pea plants. Why did he study pea plants? Not something like cute, fuzzy puppies. It's actually a really important reason why. So let's first look at our flipped 5 for Monday. So Gregor Mendel. Who is Gregor Mendel and why did he study pea plants? Let's get some answers. So Gregor Mendel is known as the father of modern genetics. Okay, but what exactly does that mean? He's known as the father of modern genetics because in the 1800s, without a lot of knowledge of cells and without any knowledge of chromosomes and genes and DNA, he didn't know about any of that. But he observed pea plants. He observed plants passing traits from one generation to the next and figured out a pattern and did repeatable experiments that people could follow and published his data and said, I think this is what is happening. And it turns out that all the things we know now about genetics and genes and chromosomes and DNA support what he studied. So a little bit of history. So Gregor Mendel, keeping in mind cell theory was kind of 1700s, 1800s. Gregor Mendel is around in the 1800s. And so this is all pretty new ideas. He wasn't so much basing his information on that. He did discover the principles of heredity, that traits are passed from parent to offspring, that some of the traits of the parents, what the traits the kids have are directly related to what they got from their parents. So some things about discovery are related to circumstance. He did have a science background. He was a science teacher. He worked at a monastery. He was a priest, and he tended the monastery gardens. So this was his job. He taught, and he worked in the gardens. And because of this, he was very familiar with the plants. He saw them. And he had lots of data that he then collected from there. So here are the pea plants. So what is a trait? A trait is what? A trait is? Yeah, it's a characteristic. The pea plants, and this is why he studied pea plants, the pea plants had very distinctive traits. The flowers were either purple or they were white. The actual peas were round or they were wrinkled. And so they were very observable traits. These are some of the traits he looked at. The seeds were round or wrinkled. The seeds were yellow or green. The seed coat, the pod shape, the pod color, the flower position, the stem height, tall and short. So they were all very distinctive things that he could see generation after generation. And the other thing about pea plants is that they reproduce fairly quickly, right? When you grow a garden, you plant the seeds, and then a couple weeks later they sprout, and then a couple weeks later they have flowers, and then they make seeds. And so then he could take those seeds and replant them. Now you might be wondering, but it's a plant. How do you know who its mom and dad is? Well, it turns out plants do sexual reproduction. Gasp. Plants have pollen and seeds. The pollen is the male parts. The seeds develop inside the female part of the plant. Most flowers have both male and female parts. But flowers can cross-pollinate. The wind, birds, bees, they move the pollen from one to another. But pea plants, to prevent self-pollination or to prevent cross-pollination by bees and bugs, Mendel could control by removing the parts with the pollen on them and using a paintbrush. So he knew this plant is being crossed with this plant. Or this plant is the mom and this plant is the dad, although there's doesn't really matter which is which. So why did he use pea plants? Easy to observe traits, short lifestyle, he could control the pollination. 3 big reasons. And that very quickly has brought us to the end of our first flipped 5. Gregor Mendel. Why did he study pea plants? What is a trait? And tomorrow we will move into dominant recessive and the very interesting patterns that Gregor Mendel saw. And there you have it, our information from today. And you can see how even though maybe it would be more entertaining and fun to raise dogs, it would take a very long time to find your results. And there are so many traits, it would be much more difficult to see what was being passed on. All right, tomorrow we will talk about the patterns he saw and the flowers he grew.